Number 10. Shelby Taylor Wise. In August 2018, a woman was severely injured after two men robbed her. They stole a bag from her that contained about $75,000 in cash. A bank worker from Houston, Texas named Shelby Taylor Wise was apparently working the day the victim withdrew the large amount of money. This was proven by security camera footage from inside of the financial establishment. Wise was clearly seen observing the woman as she got the money. After seeing this, Wise took out her cell phone and appeared to send a text message to someone. Police believe the worker told the robbers about the victim with this text because just a few hours later, the wealthy unnamed woman was targeted. The entire incident was captured on film. She struggled to hold on to her bag as the man grabbed onto it. They kicked her multiple times and even punched her as they dragged her body along trying to get away. The suspects' names eventually came forward, and they were identified as Davis Dow Mitchell and Trevon Johnson. After stealing the bag with the large amount of cash inside, the thieves got into their vehicle and ran over the helpless woman. Luckily, though, she survived. Investigators found links between Wise and the men, making her complicit in this serious crime. As a punishment, Wise was charged with felony robbery along with Mitchell and Johnson. However, the men were tried for an additional charge of assault. Unfortunately, it's unclear how the case played out, as there doesn't seem to be any recent updates on the case. Number 9. Carol Maltesi. In Borno, Italy in 2022, the body of 26-year-old Carol Maltesi was discovered near a hiking trail inside 15 garbage bags. The person who found her said they noticed her fingers and manicured nails peeking out of a bag's opening. Carol was a prominent OnlyFans star who often posted tailored content to her page for her fans and donors. People think that she was killed well before being dumped. They suspect that the killer dismembered her corpse and froze her while thinking of what to do with the remains. Investigators also told news sources that Carol's face was badly burned, but thanks to her distinctive tattoos, they were able to identify her. When they realized who the victim was, Carol's ex, 43-year-old Davide Fontana, was called to be interviewed by police. During questioning, the man supposedly admitted to the murder. At first, he denied everything, but the details of his stories didn't seem to line up, and he was soon forced to confess. Davide said that his ex's death was an accident, but nobody truly believed this since he'd cut the woman up into several pieces. The man also used Carol's phone to send messages to both her mother and boyfriend. He did this for about 3 months to avoid suspicion, even going as far as to pay the victim's rent. For his disgusting actions, Davide was arrested on several charges including first-degree homicide, dismembering, and concealing a corpse. To further cement his guilt, detectives found traces of his DNA on the bags Carol was found in. Davide has yet to be sentenced for killing Carol, but soon enough he'll present himself in front of a judge, who will most likely sentence him to life behind bars. Number 8. Sarah Daisley. In 2021, 29-year-old Sarah Daisley was arrested for 112 crimes. The woman used to work for a bank in St. George until it was uncovered that she was running a crime syndicate. After an investigation by NSW Police's Caribbean Strike Force that lasted over 7 months, they discovered multiple cases of fraudulent activity conducted by Sarah. Officers searched her home, then subsequently arrested her. This wasn't her first run-in with law enforcement either, as she'd already been arrested once in December the year before for fraud. 3 other men were taken into custody in connection to the police raids. Investigators were able to find over $400,000 in cash, as well as several incriminating documents and electronic devices. It's believed that the arrested men used their positions as accountants and submitted fake tax information to help the crime syndicate in return for financial compensation. Other suspects are still being uncovered, but there's likely more people involved. Despite this, Sarah was determined to be the mastermind behind the fraudulent operation. A few of her 112 offenses include possessing false documentation and dishonestly obtaining a financial advantage through deception. If found guilty of all the charges brought against her, Sarah could spend decades in prison. Number 7. Chen YILE. In December 2022, a young woman from China was arrested after spending 25 years on the run from police. She once worked at a bank, and law enforcement has often referred to her as Chen YILE, which is a pseudonym. Chen supposedly stole about $600,000 from her job decades ago in 1997. She used this money to get multiple plastic surgery procedures done, and afterward, she started a new life. In 1997, when Chen was 26 years old, she worked at the China Construction Bank in Yuqing City. This happened to be one of the largest financial institutions in the country, and she had a job as a counter clerk. At work one day, Chen realized that there was a fatal flaw in the so-called advanced system. By exploiting it, she was able to edit the numbers in an account, and she made it seem like someone had a lot more money than they actually did. After changing things up, she was then able to withdraw a large amount of cash. This discovery was only one step of Chen's plan. Once she found out how she could get money, she decided to transfer to another branch of the bank. During a weekend when the facility was closed down, she snuck inside, fudged some numbers, and gave herself 5.66 million Chinese yuan, which is equivalent to roughly 835,000 USD. Chen continued her scheme and went to several different banks to withdraw the large amount before escaping to undergo plastic surgery. She tried hiding some of the cash at her parents' home, but eventually decided to head south in order to avoid getting caught. Her own father reported Chen's actions to the police, but they were unable to catch her with the limited capabilities of technology at the time. After searching for Chen for so long, investigators found out that she'd gotten married and had a daughter since the crime. She also was a fairly successful businesswoman. Chen had a new identity and an entirely different life. This came as a shock to her previous husband, who she left high and dry and completely ghosted. A few of the charges this former bank employee faces include corruption, identity fraud, and getting remarried without resolving a past marriage. It's truly crazy that Chen got away with her crime for so long. So many years had passed that she must have thought she was in the clear. However, now that she's in police custody, she'll have to answer for what she's done. But as of right now, she has yet to be sentenced. Number 6. Erin CHANEY. At the beginning of 2023, Erin CHANEY, a 27-year-old First Horizon bank teller, was accused of stealing from an elderly woman. The young man from Memphis reportedly robbed her out of over $28,000. When the 83-year-old victim first found out about the unauthorized charges on her bank account, she went to First Horizon to dispute them. Once she arrived at the bank, the woman spoke with Erin about fixing the issues. He helped her get a new card but said the PIN needed to be on file. Erin also lied to the victim, saying that all the suspicious charges would be taken care of and that authorities would be told of the situation. Despite his seemingly innocent attempt to help the woman, Erin was actually stealing from her the whole time. Investigators looked at security footage from a Memphis Walmart that the suspect visited and saw him using the victim's cards to pay for items. For this crime, police quickly arrested the wayward bank employee and charged him with identity theft, exploiting a vulnerable person, theft of property, and more. It's sad to see that Erin took advantage of someone so innocent. Unfortunately, many elderly people are scammed out of money every day. No outcome has been reached yet for this case, but hopefully justice will be served and Erin will be punished for his crimes. If you had to go on the run in order to avoid prison, what would you change your name to? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Number 5. Nathan Newell. On November 11, 2019, 21-year-old Nathan Newell strangled a 78-year-old man. At the time, Nathan worked at the Freedom Federal Credit Union in Bel Air. After knocking on the door of Glenn Kulik, the bank employee waited for the elderly man to answer. When he did, Nathan immediately pushed Glenn to the ground, jumped on top of him, and started choking the poor guy. This obviously made quite a bit of noise, and the victim's stepdaughter heard the loud commotion. She came out to see what was happening, which is when she witnessed the violent attack. At this point, Natalie's reflexes kicked in, and she pounced on the back of Nathan to try and get him off her stepdad. The fight continued from the entryway into other rooms of the house as the three of them struggled. As a tall, well-built man, Nathan had quite the advantage over the other two. He was able to hold both Glenn and Natalie by their necks while asking them about money. Luckily, in the heated exchange, the mask Nathan was wearing fell off, and the victims saw his face. Before he made his escape, Natalie called the police as the thief looked for cash. Nathan was later identified and arrested at his workplace. He was charged and convicted of second-degree attempted murder, burglary, assault, and more. The man was also immediately fired from his position at the credit union. Nathan's sentencing was initially scheduled for October 15, 2021, but that date has come and passed, and there hasn't been any updates on the case. It's likely that for some reason or another, things were postponed, possibly due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Number 4. Brian McConnell. The McConnell family was horrified after realizing an unknown man broke into their house back in November 2015. Katie McConnell, a 35-year-old mother of 2 young kids, had a gun pointed at her during the incident. In order to calm down her frightened children, Katie told them that the break-in was all just an elaborate game. The intruder was eventually discovered to be 18-year-old Taylor Chrisman. During the time he was inside the family's Galion, Ohio home, Taylor barely said a word. Instead, he handed the McConnells notes that detailed why he was there. On one of the handwritten messages it said, "If you don't do what I say, I will kill you and your family." Apparently, the young thief was drawn to the family because Brian McConnell managed a bank. Brian wasn't actually home yet when Taylor first broke in, but he soon came back to the house. In an interview, he said that he thought it was a joke at first when he saw the intruder decked out in a bandana and mask. After seeing the gun and his terrified wife and kids, though, the reality of the situation dawned on him. Taylor instructed the bank manager to take his employees and co-workers hostage the next day. He was also ordered to steal money out of the building's vault. Brian tried explaining that the drastic plan would never work, but the thief was determined, saying, "If I die, I die." The next day, Brian went to the bank early in the morning before anyone was there. He then came back to the house with a duffel bag stuffed with cash. While Taylor was distracted counting money, Brian reached for his gun, and they ended up wrestling until he could point the weapon at the intruder. Instead of shooting him, though, Brian feared Taylor's accomplices would hurt his family, so he let the young man go before calling 911. A month after the incident, Taylor and 23-year-old Chris Hill were arrested. It's unclear what sentence the men got, but with an overwhelming amount of evidence, they were likely sent to prison for quite some time. Number 3. RURIK Jutting. In 2014, RURIK Jutting brutally killed 2 women in Hong Kong. The 31-year-old British man used to work as a banker, but now he'll forever be remembered as a cold-blooded killer. His victims included 23-year-old Sumari Ningsi and 28-year-old Seneng Mujasi. Investigators determined that RURIK, under the influence of drugs and alcohol, tortured the Indonesian women for multiple days. He cut the throat of one of the girls before hiding her remains in some luggage. After he'd finished with both of them, he called the police to confess to the crimes. RURIK's defense attorneys argued that the murders were a result of multiple mental disorders. Despite the man's incredibly high intelligence with an IQ of 137, he suffered from sexual sadism disorder and narcissistic personality disorder, as well as alcohol and drug-related disorders. The prosecution claimed that these defects wouldn't have been enough to sufficiently control his actions during the slayings, and so he was consequently sentenced to life in prison. Number 2. KAYLA Miller. Toward the end of 2022, a woman from Grovetown, Georgia named KAYLA Miller was arrested for fraud. The woman held a managerial role at a bank, and through her work, she was able to get access to discreet customer information. Once KAYLA had the info in her hands, she and her boyfriend, Tymeen Walker, opened up fake accounts, created fraudulent checks, and more. They were also assisted by a third suspect named Neam Williams. Upon searching KAYLA's home, police found stolen bank cards and private information from multiple victims. They believe that the total amount KAYLA and her crew stole was about $1.6 million. More evidence was also discovered after looking through Tymeen's place of work. The suspects apparently stole all this cash so they could live out their dreams of luxury. All 3 of them were arrested on different charges related to fraud. KAYLA and Neam have since been released on bail, but Tymeen remains at the Columbia County Detention Center after violating his probation. This case happened recently, so we'll have to wait and see what punishment will be handed to these con men. Number 1. MCLEAN and CRUZ. In February 2019, a teller at a Chase Bank in Woodlands, Texas was arrested after planning to rob the building. 29-year-old Victoria McLean and her girlfriend, 25-year-old Jasmine Cruz, planned the robbery ahead of time, but it seems like their plan wasn't foolproof. After looking at surveillance images, police saw Jasmine wearing a disguise while walking into the bank. She had on a wig with chunky bangs and large sunglasses that covered her eyes. They could see that the suspect walked out of the Chase building and into a distinct white Jeep. The day of the robbery, Victoria was working, but it was quickly discovered that the two were both involved in the plot. Jasmine was later arrested on robbery charges, while her girlfriend was taken into custody for theft and a few other charges from previous crimes. Unfortunately, the outcome of these cases aren't clear. Have you ever had your credit card information stolen? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, And we'll see you next time on Bad Badger.